won't none! You don't want none!
What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? It is your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel. And in this huddle, we're going to talk about the 14-10 Virginia Tech Hokies visiting the Dean Dome on February 7th at 2 p.m. on the ACC Network to take on the number 7 currently North Carolina Tar Heels and what, please, Lord, should be just what the doctor ordered. North Carolina has been a different team since that win over top 10 Duke, man. They've dropped 2 out of 3 and 3 out of 5 against unranked conference opponents, so the Heels are desperate for a W here. But before we dive into the details of that game, let's take a look at the updated ACC rankings as of February 15th of 2024. And we see that the North Carolina Tar Heels are clinging on to that number 1 spot by the skin of their teeth over the Duke Blue Devils by just half a game. UNC is 11-3. Duke is 10-3. Virginia is 10-4. Wake Forest is 8-5. Clemson, Pitt, the team that we love to hate, and Florida State are at 7-6. Syracuse is at 7-7. Our opponent, the Virginia Tech Hokies, are at 6-7. Miami's at 6-8. Boston College is at 5-8. Notre Dame is at 4-10. And Louisville and Georgia Tech bring up the rear at 3-11. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the weeds of this one. The North Carolina Tar Heels are 36-10 against the Hokies since the 1949-1950 season. The Heels' last meeting with Virginia Tech was on December 4th, 2022, where the Heels lost in Blacksburg 80-72. And one of those early letdown games for a Tar Heel team that was ranked preseason number 1. En route to completely missing the tourney entirely. Now, Virginia Tech is averaging 74.3 points per game, and they're giving up 69.7 points per game. The Heels, on the other hand, are averaging 82.3 points per game, and they're giving up an even 71 points per game. The Virginia Tech Hokies are 2-3 in their last 5 games with wins over Florida State and Georgia Tech at home. They've had losses at home against Duke, at Miami, and at Notre Dame. The Heels are 2-3 themselves, as was aforementioned, with 3 losses against unranked opponents. Now, the Virginia Tech Hokies are led by head coach Mike Young, who is in his 5th year at Virginia Tech. He's amassed an overall record of 386 and 305 at Wofford, and now Virginia Tech. He's 87-61 as a Hokie with a 588 win percentage. The Hokies' leading scorer is 6'1", 195-pound junior guard Sean Padula, who was averaging 15.8 points per game, 4 boards, and 4.5 assists. He's shooting 40.7% from the field and 36.4% from 3. A very capable guard who does a really good job of looking for his offense while simultaneously being a good facilitator. Padula's a really good guard. Then there's 6'3", 200-pound senior guard Hunter Couture, who is averaging 14.5 points per game, 2.8 rebounds, and 1.9 assists. He's shooting 48.5% from the field and 43.8% from behind the arc. Hunter has averaged 19 points per game over his last 3, so the kid's feeling it. Gonna have to be somebody that the Heels check as our guard defense or our defense against opposing guards has not been necessarily stellar here recently. Then there's 6'10", 230-pound senior center Len Kidd, who was averaging 13 points per game, 6.8 boards, and 1.3 assists. He's shooting 64.1% from the field and 86.8% from the charity stripe. Then there's 6'7", 220-pound sophomore guard and North Carolina transfer Tyler Nickel. Nickel's averaging 9 points per game, 2 boards, and 1.3 assists. He's shooting 45.5% from the floor and 41.6% from 3. And last but not least is 6'4", 195-pound sophomore guard MJ Collins, who's averaging only 5.8 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists. He's shooting 30.2% from the floor and only 23.8% from 3. Virginia Tech will also throw out forward Robbie Baran, forward Malai JL Poteet, forward Makai Long, and guard Brandon Recksteiner. So the Virginia Tech Hokies, they go about 9 deep, as they got about 9 guys that average 10 minutes a game, give or take. Now, that's the enemy. Let's take a look at the Heels. The North Carolina Tar Heels are led by head coach Hubert Davis, who is in his 3rd year at his alma mater. Coach Davis has amassed a 68-29 record, good for a 7.01 win percentage at UNC. The Heels' leading scorer is 6', 180-pound senior guard R.J. Davis, who is averaging 21.4 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, and 3.5 assists. He's shooting 43.1% from the field and 41.1% from 3. Next is 6'1", 180-pound freshman point guard Elliot Cadeau, who is averaging 7.8 points per game, 1.8 rebounds, and 3.9 assists. He's shooting 42.3% from the floor and only 21.9% from 3, although he has looked much better from beyond the arc in the last 2 ball games. Then there's 6'5", 195-pound senior guard Cormac Ryan, who's averaging 10.6 points per game, 3 boards, and 1.4 assists. He's shooting 36.5% from the field and 30.4% from 3. Cormac scored 18 in the loss to Syracuse and shot better than 40% from the field and 3. But it was the 5 untimely turnovers that he had that had Tar Heel Nation in an uproar. Then there's 6'7", 235-pound junior forward Harrison Ingram, who's averaging 12.6 points per game, 8.8 rebounds, and 2.3 assists. He's shooting 44.5% from the field and 42.1% from 3. And last but not least is 6'11", 240-pound senior forward Armando Bacot, who's averaging 14.2 points per game, 10.2 rebounds, and 1.6 assists. He's shooting 55% from the field and 79.4% from the charity stripe. The Heels will also bring out guard Seth Trimble, forward Jalen Washington, forward Jalen Withers, and occasionally guard Paxson Wojcik off the bench. So now that we looked at the tail of the tape, let's take a look at Russ's 3 keys to victory. Key number 1, defend. The North Carolina Tar Heels allowed the Syracuse Orange to shoot a ridiculous 62.5% from the field in their loss. And over the course of these lackluster, aside from like the Duke game, performances in the last 5, the Heels have not been the same defensive team. Opposing guards are getting way too much penetration. Then if they can't get to the rack, they're having easy kickouts and even pulling up over our shorter guards. It shouldn't necessarily be the case where Virginia Tech's Padula is their leading scorer, and he only stands at 6'1". The Heels need to lock down the Hokies at home, period. There's literally zero excuse not to defend. So, key number 1, got to defend, got to get back to that old school stinking defense that got us where we were. Lock them down. It all starts with the guards playing good perimeter defense. Bang. I am still convinced that an aggressive Armando Bacot that is actively seeking his shot is a positive for this UNC basketball team. The issues is that Mondo can sometimes be extremely passive down on the blocks in large stretches. He has got to establish position early in each possession. He's got to demand the basketball, and he's got to take shots when he's one-on-one and pass out to open shooters before the double team comes. Key number two, man, and you guys may differ with me on this, but I am still convinced that it's got to be inside out. He's just got to be more aggressive, especially when they try to guard him with just one person. And key number three, bring in the reserves. The North Carolina Tar Heels only saw 3 Heels come off of the bench against Syracuse, and despite the Jalen brothers both logging decent minutes and being productive in their time on the floor, they were held to a limited capacity, and they watched the game from the pine in large stretches, especially in the second half, because the Heels played from behind all night. Coach Davis has got to get these guys some extended minutes, if nothing more than to preserve the starters' legs late in the game. Cormac played all 20 minutes of the second half. Dude, I don't care who you are. Your legs are going to be tired, especially when you're giving it your all on offense and you're giving it your all on defense. And that could have possibly been one of the reasons why he was more prone to turn the ball over late in the game. The Jalen brothers and Seth especially, they can produce, but not if they aren't given a legitimate chance. We have got to utilize the bench more efficiently. Key number 3, man, we got to bring in the reserves. And that'll take us to Russ's score prediction. The ESPN matchup indicator gives the North Carolina Tar Heels an 85.1% chance at beating the Virginia Tech Hokies in Chapel Hill. But North Carolina, we will see. I feel like there's a mental veil right now over the eyes of this team. I'm not going to lie. I don't know where it came from, and I don't know when or if it's going to leave this year. But the Heels absolutely cannot drop this ball game. And I honestly don't think that they will. But I didn't think that they dropped the one to Clemson either. So it would be an absolute backbreaker if Carolina lost to Virginia Tech at home. But I truly do think there's a mental aspect to this recent lapse in offensive and defensive efficiency. Despite UNC's struggles, however, I'm going to pick the Heels. But I'm going to pick them in a much closer matchup than what many people would anticipate a top 10 team versus a reeling team in their own house. I'm going to say North Carolina wins this game in a close one. 79-75. That just doesn't do anything moving the needle going forward. And my hopes is that Carolina ekes out a win. They stay ahead in the ACC, and they get a much-needed week off for a mental and physical break before traveling to Charlottesville to take on UVA in a pivotal ACC matchup. I really do think that that's what it really is, man. All we need to do in this ball game is get a W. I don't care if it's by one stinking point. Get to this week-long break. That's what we need to do. Everything you got, just get it done. Let's get a W. Let's get that 20th win. Stay atop the ACC and just be able to breathe for the next week and just reset. Just reset almost everything mentally and physically. So tell me what you think about this ball game, Tar Heel and Hokie Nation. Is Russ onto something, or am I sitting down at the edge of the bench pretending that I know what I'm talking about, which has kind of been the case here lately? If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Shout out to my Huddle Hooligans who continue to support me every single month. Man, I love you guys. I appreciate you. I could not do this without you. Unfortunately, your boy's got to stinking work on Saturday, so no live stream due to work conflictions, but the reaction video will be shortly following the game. Hey, man, let's just hope that the Heels get it done. Let's just hope that they get a W. It really doesn't matter how good of a W it is at this point. What you think, man? I love you, Tar Heel Nation. We'll catch you on the next one, baby.